Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the One Hood Power Hour. Here as we are every Monday night, me and my co-host Miracle Jones. We'll be joined by our third, regular co-host Kahari Mosley momentarily as well. We've got another really exciting, informational, important episode for you tonight. We're going to be focusing on everything that folks in Pennsylvania need to know about pardons and expungements, especially the new programs pertaining to that, and just how those processes work in general. So we'll be joined by some great guests tonight. We have John Harris from the Legal LLC. We have Corry Sanders, who himself has been through the process of receiving a pardon. We have Julie Strickland Gilliard, who is from the Office of the Lieutenant Governor, State of Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, and has been, really involved in these new expedited pardon programs. And we have Brandon Floyd, who's from the Pennsylvania Board of Pardons. So, really excited for the show tonight. We're going to jump into that shortly in a few minutes, and have that really great panel of guests with us tonight. So thank you all for tuning in, and we're excited to get into that in a few minutes.
And we know, just to get into it, today has been a very stressful day as the Derek Chauvin trial has ended. And on top of that, there is a lot of discourse from Florida to Texas about bills being passed to actually criminalize protesting and organizing. And so we know that there is a lot of stuff going on in the country nationwide as it relates to policing and organizing. So we understand that a lot of your thoughts and hearts and minds are focused on Minneapolis, and we want to just take a moment to recognize that and even understand that here in Pennsylvania, a lot of people, a lot of organizations are trying to put into movement various plans for whatever is going to happen with the jury. So I want to encourage people to stay focused, to stay engaged, and stay motivated to engage and protect and support your communities, because it's going to be very stressful weeks for the next few days for a lot of us. And so on top of that, today is the first day that anyone is eligible, anyone and everyone is eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine at the request of the Biden administration. So we watched today as states and U.S. territories have expanded their vaccine eligibility. Of course, we still understand that this doesn't impact people of the global majority, because there is still a lot of vaccine hoarding that is going on, but we are another step closer to getting this pandemic under control. But that still does not mean that people no longer have to wear a mask, no longer have to social distance. And so we're very cautious that people do not cause a spike thinking that because the vaccine is here, they no longer have to follow CDC guidelines.
Absolutely. And another thing I think that's important to emphasize, along that same point, that we still have to, take those precautionary measures to keep each other safe, is that even after that second shot, you still need to wait really about 2 weeks, before that's all fully effective. So, in addition to continuing just to social distance and wear a mask and take all those, precautionary measures in public, just to be mindful of other people and make them comfortable and safe. Just be mindful of that 2 week period as well, even after the second shot, if you do get the 2 week vaccine or the 2-shot vaccine. And then also, going back to what you said about all those states, introducing legislation, further criminalizing protesting. I believe Minnesota was one of those states as well, in the midst of all, all the ongoing protests related to Daunte Wright, and connected to the Chauvin trial as well. I believe that was tied to the ability to receive financial aid for schooling in the future, which is just, a really, really disappointing and a bill that we really wouldn't want to see, passed or introduced anywhere. So, that's just the type of legislation we need to be keeping our eyes on, organizing around. I don't think it's likely to pass in Minnesota or make it through that process. But just, keeping an eye on that in states across the country, Pennsylvania, everywhere else where that could continue to be a problem.
Yes. And so I think that in addition to what we're seeing locally, on the national level, there is calls to pass the Breathe Act and the George Floyd Policing Act. Both bills are on the federal side of things that would kind of regulate policing. But again, it's very important that when we see any type of reform bills, we have to ask, will these bills stop people from being killed by police, or will it just make it easier to prosecute officers? Because we got to make sure that what we're organizing and galvanizing is actually going to have a change and not necessarily just provide more funding for these institutions. But we, like Ryan said at the top of the hour, we have a very great show planned for you all this evening. When it comes to voting and voting eligibility, one group of people who've been left out and who've been disenfranchised from voting are people with criminal records, depending on your jurisdiction. We know a lot of people who've had felony convictions were long not able to vote. Luckily, here in Pennsylvania, once you have served your time, and as we say, if you have feet on the street, boots on the ground, you are eligible to vote, even if you have a felony conviction. But what you are not able to do is run for various seats in office, apply for various educational positions, take on various occupational positions, have a gun license, and even live in certain neighborhoods. And so, what we wanted to do is bring you all this show about the new pardon. It's not necessarily new program, but the newer restrictions that have been lifted that make the application for a pardon more affordable, more accessible to folks. And with that, we have the pardon liaison from Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman's office, Julie Strickland, who's going to come and talk to us about some of the changes, why these changes have been made, and how you can take advantage of this new streamlined process. And with that, we welcome Julie to the One Hood Power Hour.
Great to be here.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Corry. Right as we wrote on the first guest.
Oh yeah. No, great to be here. Thank you for your patience. It's been a busy Monday already.
But well, yes, Julie.
Sure, go ahead.
Can you just talk about some of the changes that have occurred over the past 2 years and what led to these changes?
Absolutely. Well, in addition to being the director of Western Pennsylvania for the Lieutenant Governor, I also work as a pardons liaison. So basically what that means is I'm working with constituents that want to learn more about the process, if they're figuring out if this is the right move for them. There are a variety of reasons why I end up talking to people on an everyday basis. I also am working with legislative offices to make sure they are armed with this information about what the Board of Pardons is doing in Pennsylvania currently. Within a very short amount of time of Lieutenant Governor taking office, the fee to apply for a pardon was waived. That is really important. We want this process to be as accessible as humanly possible. So financial barriers, those are real. So I encourage everyone, if you have a record and you want to explore the pardons process, This is really an investment in yourself, as Secretary Flood says. So there is a paper application to fill out, which can be found at bop.pa.gov. However, if you would like to contact your legislators' offices, of course, contacting our office as well. If you need help getting connected to get that application, they are working on modernizing the process. They've streamlined the application. I'm sure in a little bit, Secretary Flood can give you more of those updates. But it's a paper application that you can fill out. We have informational packets that I also provide to individuals. They're also available online, as well as a wonderful YouTube video Lieutenant Governor and Secretary Flood put together that can help explain and walk you through the application step by step. Also, the Board of Pardons is available, as well as our office, to answer any specific questions, because as we all know, no two cases are alike. So we're always happy to answer questions.
I just had a quick question. Could you just talk a little bit about, why the lieutenant governor, has made this, such, an important issue. We had, dozens of lieutenant governors throughout the history of Pennsylvania, and from what I understand, they've had, this kind of jurisdictional area as far as pardons. Why has he taken it during his tenure to kind of raise awareness about this and make this such a such an important issue, when maybe in the past some lieutenant governors have maybe had a blind spot when it comes to this?
Well, I think the lieutenant governor, throughout his entire career, making sure that people have all of the opportunities and options in their life, that's really key to keeping our society running, having healthy and stable communities, having individuals who are able to fully participate in their communities. So this is really just runs along, the thread of his career and what he's interested in. And I have to tell you, just in my time working in this office and working with constituents who are interested in partaking in this process, there's a whole range of reasons why someone ends up seeking a pardon. For some people, it was a mistake that they made a long time ago, and they just want it cleaned off of their record. For other people, it may be that they're unable to participate in their children's activities because of clearances that they have to fill out. Getting jobs, economic opportunities, housing opportunities. This is all social justice related, which is what we are all about in our office. And this is a wonderful opportunity to really make those changes and make this accessible to everybody. We've done a great deal of public speaking and interviews such as this, and thank you for raising this topic. The amount of people that we reach, we need folks like yourselves to elevate these issues, to make people aware that this process is here. It's for everybody. This is not for the rich and well-connected. This is for every single person that would like to get a second chance, and we believe in them.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just, related to that overall process, I wanted to ask if you could speak briefly as well about the expedited pardon program that was passed, or that was put into place, within the last couple of years, that pertains to specific nonviolent offenses. If you could just talk about that briefly.
Yeah, so this is it's specifically for small cannabis related offenses that were nonviolent offenses. There is a specific questionnaire, and Secretary Flood actually could elaborate on this a great deal. But there is a specific questionnaire that's filled out. It's slightly different, but that information is also available on the same website at bop.pa.gov. So this is, as you know, the Lieutenant Governor has been pro-legalization in Pennsylvania, but also when we're talking about what these barriers have done. You know, we've had people that were caught with a very small amount of cannabis, and the devastating impact it's had on their lives. People who, you know, were caught with something as simple as a joint, maybe, you know, when they were 19, 20 years old, have now gone most of their career not being able to fully take on all of the opportunities that might have been available to them otherwise. So this is another way that we can also elevate this issue, I believe, in a sense, to show how many people that this actually impacts. I don't think people have been as open because some people don't want to openly talk about their criminal history, but this is a barrier, and we need to talk about this, and we need to talk about who it's affecting and impacting, especially when we talk about African Americans and the rate at which African Americans have been convicted for things that sometimes individuals who are white may not have faced the same charges or the same penalty. So this is a really important issue that, again, thank you for highlighting that. And again, Secretary Flood, I think, could talk a little bit more about the process and really what it means to be expedited. He can give a wonderful explanation for that.
Thank you for that. And speaking of Secretary Flood, we were going to go ahead and invite him in to join to join us in this broadcast. And for those who don't know, Secretary Flood is the Secretary of, you know, the Board of Pardons. And, you know, can you introduce yourself to our audience, Secretary, and just let them know a little bit of your background and why this is so important that people understand what these new processes mean for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Echo Julie's sentiments. Thank you guys for the invitation. Thank you for elevating this issue. As was mentioned, my name is Brandon Flood. I serve as the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Board of Pardons. I was appointed to this post April 1st of 2019 by our 34th Lieutenant Governor, John Fetterman. Prior to this role, I worked in state government for the last decade. Mostly with the House of Representatives, mostly in a research and policy development capacity. Left the legislature for a little bit and went into the government affairs, the lobbying world, worked for the Service Employees International Union for Pennsylvania as their ledge director, served as the chief lobbyist for the Pennsylvania NAACP, and had a brief spell when I came back to state government with the Department of General Services around contracting and diversity and inclusion. But what makes my appointment even more unique is I also I have lived experience. I served 9 years collectively in the Department of Corrections, 4 years as an 18-year-old and 5 years as a 23-year-old. So that's what was large in part what drove the Lieutenant Governor to appoint me to this post. I should also mention I also received a pardon myself, March of 2019, which set the table for me to take over this position. And the Lieutenant Governor has been very clear. Part of the reason why he appointed me to this post is because he felt like I was uniquely qualified to revamp this process, right? Not only revamp it, but to modernize the way that we do business. Most people, I can't remember who said it earlier, our agency isn't new. We've been around for 150 years, almost for as long as state government has been formalized. But by and large, it's been, as Julie said, mostly those that have been rich and well-connected, the people that who were in the know, who really took advantage of this program. And as Julie said, our collective goal is to ensure that the everyday person can take advantage of this process and that they can do so in an unencumbered manner. So it's a little bit about myself, and that's the culture that we're pushing, at least until 2023, January 2023, when obviously this administration will transition out.
Thank you for that, Brandon. I have a question for Brandon and Julie. Just at this moment, in our country's history, as a jury deliberates in Minnesota, as the country waits, with bated breath, we've had this conversation about criminal, justice reform. And one of the things that I find so striking about the conversation that we're having this evening is that oftentimes we look, obviously in Pennsylvania, We have statewide appellate elections this year. We have court of common pleas. We have people running for magisterial district court. I know in the Philadelphia area, they have some other minor courts that we don't have in some of the other counties that people, are running for. And that, and even, in other years, district attorneys and attorney generals. But what I found so interesting is like so much of this conversation we're having is about criminal justice reform, but often we don't look, at, the Board of Pardons. We don't look at like the lieutenant, governor's office and the role, the important role that they play, in criminal justice reform. We're looking at magistrates. We're looking at, we're trying to get people to get out and vote for, court of common pleas and their local judicial offices that are also very important. But, as we kind of put this puzzle together, I really appreciate the work that you're doing and highlighting, how there's this other office that also plays an important role. And as we kind of put together this larger strategy, we can't have a blind spot to these other administrative offices that in many ways really have the jurisdiction, when we talk about the Department of Corrections and places like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As was said earlier, the goal here is to increase access, and you can't talk about criminal justice reform if you don't talk about executive clemency, right? For too long, executive clemency has been kind of in its own box and looked at as extraordinary relief during extraordinary times, when executive clemency should be used as a tool to combat recidivism, right? To drive those numbers down. The more that people are aware of the fact, or knowledgeable about the fact that even if they did make a mistake, or if they made a mistake twice, in my case, I made a mistake, twice and quite a few times as a juvenile, that there is a pathway for redemption. So we've kind of turned clemency on its head, where we're utilizing executive clemency as an additional tool to address mass incarceration, to address criminal justice reform, but more importantly, to combat and drive down those recidivism numbers.
Well, and certainly, I feel as part of my duties in our office, certainly, I have a background in doing work in the community and came from the nonprofit sector. So I think that it's very important for us to make that effort to make sure that we are actually engaging with community, actually talking about what these processes look like, how they operate, who is involved. As much as community is, and it's certainly now with COVID in a very stressful situation, I want to do my very best to be as accessible to people as possible and making those connections and educating as much as I can.
And so speaking to the pardon process itself, I had a question for Secretary Flood as well. If you could just talk about if there's any restrictions on who can apply for a pardon, as well as what conditions must be met in order for it to be likely, or for someone to have a good chance of receiving that pardon.
Right. So one of the biggest misconceptions about this process is that only certain convictions are eligible. Those convicted of certain offenses are eligible. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Every offense is eligible as long as you were convicted in either the court of common pleas or in the magistrate level. You're eligible for a pardon. Now, the only caveat to that is obviously the more egregious or serious the offense, the higher the bar is to clear. So when you think of violent offenses or sexual offenses, obviously there's going to be a higher standard that the board is going to judge an applicant by. To your point about what factors, some of the primary factors that the board looks at is obviously they look at the extent of the crime. They look at if this is very much a victim involved process. So victims are engaged and they do have a chance to weigh in. So those are two factors. The other thing the board looks at is how long ago was the offense? When was your last conviction? So time is key. So this, one of the other questions, frequently asked questions we get is from people, prospective applicants, is when should I put in, or how long do I have to wait? Technically, you don't have to wait any period of time, but what our board is looking for is demonstrable evidence that you've turned that corner and you've changed your ways, right? So to the extent you can exhibit that in 3 years, then great. You can wait 3 years to apply. For some people, it may take 10, 20 years, especially given how extensive one's criminal history is. The other thing that the board is looking at is what have you done since the time of your incarceration or since your conviction, right? So what have you done not only to restore yourself or build yourself up, but what have you done to restore your community, or in the case where you have victims involved, what have you done to atone or to make amends for victims? The other thing that people look at, and Julie mentioned it earlier, that the board looks at, that Julie mentioned earlier, was why people are requesting clemency. Some people have some very compelling reasons. For some people, it isn't a matter of them. It's not a matter of employment, even though the vast majority of the applications we get are from employment. But as Julie said, sometimes people just don't want to. They want to be able to pass a background check to participate at their kid's school, or to be able to work in a field. I think Miracle mentioned it, to be able to work in, education field or in the medical field. And you have people that go through, advanced schooling and get these advanced degrees only to, they do the hard work only to be locked out because of that conviction. So, those are the things that the board looks at. And then obviously when the board interviews applicants, obviously one's presentation, if someone's taking responsibility for their actions. The vast majority of people that apply for executive clemency, they admit some degree of culpability, if not full culpability. So to what extent can you take responsibility and be insightful about your actions, but more importantly, be able to convey to the board how you were able to overcome, address those shortcomings and be able to deal with those triggers that previously may have led to someone being convicted of an offense.
And I just had a quick question about terms. Is there any distinction between pardons, expungements, and clemency? You've used these words, and as a layman, I was just curious, is there any distinction between that terminology?
Yeah, there is. And Julie mentioned our website, bop.pa.gov. We actually have definitions of everything there. But yeah, there's a lot of terms to contend with. You got expungement, you got sealing, you got commutations, you got clemency, you got pardons. So yeah, the difference between, so when you think of executive clemency, now executive clemency is just the governor being authorized to extend mercy or forgiveness to anyone that's been convicted of a crime. But clemency, so think of clemency as the umbrella term, and then clemency encompasses two parts. It's made up of two parts. Pardons, which most of us are familiar with. Pardons allow you to remove your record in its entirety. It is as if you've never been convicted of an offense. So that's one side of the clemency coin. And then the second side is commutations. So that's the modification or the reduction of one sentence. So think of someone who has been condemned to death row, life without parole, or who has a numerical sentence where it may be deemed excessive. What our board does is it reduces that sentence so that person can be released. So that's what executive clemency is. And then when it comes to expungement, which I'm sure John will talk a little bit more about later, expungement is just someone who was previously been convicted of a crime. They're authorized to go directly through the court of common pleas to file a petition to get their record removed. The only thing with expungement, it is very restrictive as to who is eligible. So unless you are 70 years of age or older and been crime free for 10 years, unless you've been dead for 3 years in Pennsylvania, unless you went through the ARD program, the Accelerated Rehabilitative Disposition Program, or if you've been convicted of a summary that's 5 years or older, or lastly, if you go through the pardon process. If you don't fall into any of those categories, you're not eligible for what's known as direct expungement, and you would have to apply for a pardon. And then sealing, you got sealing, that's a whole different ball game. But again, I'll defer to John to talk about some of those distinctions.
Well, thank you for that. Super helpful.
So just as a follow-up to your last point, actually, I believe there was a bill passed in the state legislature, Senate Bill 391, within the last couple of years that expanded the list of offenses that could be eligible for expungement. I believe that now includes some misdemeanor offenses as well. Is that correct?
Right. So it doesn't include misdemeanor offenses. What happened was in 2018, there was what was known as the clean slate law. So the clean slate law, essentially, that's where I guess you're making me talk about sealing now. So that pertains to sealing. So that removes what sealing does is it doesn't get rid of the record in its entirety, but it limits who has access to it. So the public doesn't have access to it anymore. If many of you may be familiar with the Pennsylvania Unified Judicial Portal, you can go to that website, literally 10 seconds, and look anyone's dockets up. So what sealing does is it removes it from that portal, and it limits who has access to it to the courts and to criminal justice agencies. So that now extends to folks that have misdemeanors that are 10 years or older. Clean slate was, at least in theory, supposed to be helpful for us because it was supposed to divert a lot of the traffic that the Board of Pardons ordinarily got, and it now provides folks with a more immediate sense of a form of relief. But yeah, so it didn't extend the expungement law for misdemeanors. It just created a sealing mechanism. But we would support that, 100%. I'm behind it. I'm sure the Lieutenant Governor's 100% behind it.
And Julie, just before we wrap with you, there was a question about, is there any plan right now to push through some of because like COVID has created a lot of people trying to put through applications and do commutations. Is there a plan right now to rapidly go through some of the applications that are on its way to I guess that's the $1 million question. But what's
so just in terms of, is the question really about, is there a current backlog?
Yes.
Well, I think Secretary Flood would actually be the one to answer that question. Though I would say and stress to individuals, the Board of Pardons is a very thorough team. They are a very dedicated team, and they are working very, very hard to process all of the applications. However, this process does take time. It is an investment in your future. And so if individuals have questions about, if they put in an application or if they're having any concerns, they can always feel free to reach out to not only the Board of Pardons, but they can also reach out to our office as well. Anybody that reaches out to our office with questions like that, typically if they're in our Western counties, I would be the one assisting with that. So if anyone has questions, please reach out and feel free to connect with us. That's why we're here.
And just to piggyback on that, as Julie said, we have at the Board of Pardons, we have a great problem on our hands. That problem is we have more people than ever applying because we've broadened the access to it, right? So just to give some context about what that looks like, historically, we've never received more than 600 applications in one calendar year. We ended 2019 with more than 1,100 applications, and then then we ended calendar year 2020, despite the pandemic, with more than 2,100 applications. So more than a 300% increase in less than a 2-year turnaround. But so while that's great, we need to increase our staffing levels need to increase commensurate with that increase in the applications that we're receiving. Because I'm of the opinion, especially we have fine folks like Julie in Western PA, it's only going to trend upward. And I'm of the opinion it should be 10,000 people applying per year. But we need the infrastructure to be able to deal with that so that this isn't a lengthy process or as lengthy a process. So to kind of harken back to what Ryan asked earlier about the expedited review program. So I'm not although I have a little bit of authority, ultimately I report to the board, so a lot of the changes that I wish to make, I can't do unilaterally. There's some things I can change unilaterally, especially administrative and the front office stuff. But when it comes to culture, when it comes to what the board is looking at, I have to be able to drum up a consensus, and get at least 3 out of 5 board members to say that makes sense. So part of what we did is we created the expedited review program for marijuana offenses because historically we've always looked at every application the same. Everyone went through the same process. Everyone was viewed through the same lens. Whether you were convicted of retail theft of a candy bar at Sheetz or Wawa, or if you had first-degree murder, everyone went through the same process. And to me, that was an imprudent use of resources. And again, it's not my job was to make this process more efficient. So we created the expedited program for marijuana offenses because they're low-level offenses, and this is more of a pilot program. I wanted to be able to show the board, both the lieutenant governor and I wanted to be able to show the board, hey, you don't have to have these exhaustive reports and all of this tons of, no, we don't have to have tons of information for these low-level offenses. So that's been in place for more than a year. The world hasn't ended as a result of that. So now what I've asked the board is to, hey, listen, this pilot program worked with marijuana offenses. Let's expand that to other low-level offenses. So Ryan, to your point, what we're experimenting now with, or what we're piloting now, is we're looking at folks that are classified as nonviolent, non-sexual, who've been removed from their last criminal conviction at least 15 years or more. And we're going to have it go through that same process where essentially right now it's taking about 3 years to process a pardon. However, our expedited program allows us to do so within 16 to 18 months from someone's submission. So more than half of that turnaround time. So we're going to be implementing that the expansion of that to lower level offenses, 15 years or older, come June. Our first June session is we'll literally have our first set of applicants go before the board that are part of this new expedited review program. And again, once we're able to show that the world isn't going to go up in flames, public safety isn't compromised, then we'll expand it again. So the goal is to create these different lanes, and there should be varying levels of review depending upon the nature of the person's conviction, and more importantly, how long ago it occurred. That's it.
Perfect. I do want to thank you both for coming on and breaking down the process and just kind of demystifying it a lot, because I still go and people are like, oh, I'm not eligible for a pardon. I'm like, you can. I know you did this bad thing, but you can still get a pardon. So I really want to thank you all for coming onto the show this evening.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Again, yeah, thank you for having us. Feel free to share. As Julie said, one thing we pride ourselves on at the Board of Pardons and the Lieutenant Governor's Office is accessibility, right? So you're not going to get a voicemail, you're not going to get spinned or the runaround. So feel free to have people reach out to us directly. You guys have my email. Feel free to make that public because we do want more people to avail themselves of this process.
And make my email public as well. That's just fine. We will get to you.
All right, thank you so much. And with we've had this conversation about what a pardon is, but we also want to bring on someone who has actually gone through the process. And Corry Sanders, a lot of you may already know him from some of the work that he's done in the local McKeesport community. But his story, made national attention when he won his election to represent the city of McKeesport, but then was denied the opportunity to be seated due to his felony conviction. And with that, we want to bring community organizer, entrepreneur, Corry Sanders to the program. So welcome, Corry.
Welcome. How you doing? Very good to see you, brother.
Good to be seen.
Absolutely. Welcome.
So like I said, we're trying to demystify this process. Can you walk us through what it was like to file for the pardon?
It was a head game. What I mean by that is it was a lot of things that was misunderstood. It wasn't just getting your application and filling it out and licking a stamp and putting it in the mailbox and sending it off, expecting them to call you next month or next year to stand in front of the pardon board. So it was many layers. A lot of people might not understand that you have to go through. It wasn't just a sprint. It was more of a triathlon, and it was many hurdles preparing it, going through it, and then there's still a few more miles even after you finish it. What Mr. Flood was saying is a lot of people are unaware of the whole total process. Now, once you get voted to get a public hearing, I had to go in Harrisburg, and then when you stand in front of the board, they will hear your story. You'll get a chance to paint your picture. and you get to actually frame your picture and change the lens, and you're not sugarcoating or watering down anything that you've done in your past. I was young and dumb. I was 19, 20 years old. Ran around in the street. I ran with some guys and sold drugs and got caught up in it. I was a 0 on the scale, first offender, and ended up getting sentenced 6 to 15 years. I never went to a Schumann, never went to a juvenile camp or nothing like that. So it was definitely a hard pill to swallow with no water. But after I was able to get that pill from the middle of my esophagus and get it down into my gut, I just had to lie in the bed that I had made hard for myself.
No, thank you for that. I mean, what advice do you have, for folks who may now be in a similar position you were, several years ago, and may, feel discouraged, with the process? 'Cause like you said, it wasn't just like licking a stamp. And, what is your advice for folks to have kind of the perseverance and the endurance to kind of go through what seems like an arduous process?
Right. You definitely have to be ready for the journey. You definitely want to connect yourself with the right resources and people with the right connections, because it's 2021. It's all about who you know and what they know and what doors they would be able to open up for you. You definitely want someone to help you put forth the work. You don't want no one to give you anything, because if you have to get a handout, or you have to be more hungry for what it is that you want. I cannot want something more for you than you want for yourself. So what I do now is I work as a liaison through the Allegheny County District Attorney's Office, Stevens Appala, and also work at the Center for Victims on the South Side, working with the outreach community group of guys there, guys and men. And I also facilitate on the untreated trauma level. So there's a lot of things that I've been doing since I received my pardon, that it was a curse and a blessing, because had I not ran for city council, I would have still just been the local Cornerstone barbershop in my downtown area. But after that, many doors opened, and ended up teaching at the barber school at Pittsburgh. And then I just took my barber teaching license to a whole different level. And so now I educate and I teach people just to understand the different levels of life. And because we all fall, there's not one occupation out there where everyone is perfect. Room for improvement is needed in every room, in every house. So that's what I do. Not only do I just give haircuts on the outer side of their head, I try to trim their mentality, the inside of their mind. And so I reach back to the youth. I reach out to, younger guys like myself. I'm 50, so they call me an old head. So, I'll accept that, as long as I can help somebody run a race. If I can help somebody do 100 yards in just 50, I can't take the test for them, but I can prepare you with the best cheat sheet that you have to do. Like I teach my students to prepare them best to take their state board exam. I try to prepare the people in my community the best way of taking this test that we live called life.
Yeah, thank you for providing that insight and that perspective, and that that lived experience related to the process. So outside of just how long the process takes to apply for and get that pardon, were there any misconceptions you had about the pardon process before you had to go through it yourself? Other than that length of time that you would like to pass along to anybody who's maybe considering to apply for a pardon right now?
Yeah, like Mr. Flood said, I'll echo to what he said. What I was told back then, I think I applied for mines in 2016, and I actually received the golden signature of Governor Tom Wolf, 9/11 of 2020. So 2016, I applied. It took about 2 to 5 years, so 3 years to be exact. And then once you get it, and then you have to wait for the governors and the board to recommend that they feel what you're saying, and they're going to give you redemption. They're going to give you a second chance in life. And so then after you get the recommendation, it sits on the governor's desk until he reviews what they voted on. And then once you receive the signature of the governor, then your pardon is granted, a full pardon. But then after I got my certificate at my house, I want to say 9/11 of 2020, I was fortunate to have Duquesne University law team take over my case because it caught the media's attention because of what was taking place. Now you have to get an attorney or whoever you have on your paperwork, and now you have to present your pardon to the judges, and now you have to get all your local stuff expunged. Now the part, like he was saying, once you get the pardon, that's passing it down now to the local departments like the DA's office, the sheriffs, and the state police and all that. Then they all shred everything. So then once you get your full pardon, everything is shredded. You just have that blemish off of your record. You can now apply for a gun. You can, if I was young enough, I could be a police officer. There's nothing that you can't do. But the biggest thing that I wanted to do was to prove to my daughter, I got 3 daughters and 2 sons. I wanted to show them that you can get up after a fall. And I wanted to show them that if there's something that you really want to do, never let someone tell you you cannot do it.
Thank you so much for that. And you're talking about needing an attorney and having people go through the process with you. With that, we want to bring on John Harris, who is an attorney who is barred in Pennsylvania and Georgia, and has gone through this process with clients, and has gone through, personally trying to get records cleaned up. And so we want to welcome to the program, Mr. Harris. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, fine, yourself. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and you're listening to Mr. Corry talk about this process. It's taking over 3.5 years, and it's very overwhelming. As an attorney, what's something that you tell your clients as they go through this process?
I let them know that it's not a sprint, it's like a marathon. So it's a lot of working parties involved in this process. Like once we file this application, that's just the beginning process. So we have to have patience, have faith, and be sure that everything is going to work out in the end. So I just let them know, keep them involved in the process if I get any communications from the other parties involved, just to keep them in the loop and let them know, like, hey, it's still light at the end of the tunnel, even though it seemed like we're still in the dark, like the light is coming. So that's pretty much it, just to keep them informed.
And so just beyond, keeping your client informed, so what really is the role of the attorney throughout that pardon process? Like, for example, there's the public hearing in Harrisburg, where you have to go and kind of, go through all the events and state your case and everything in front of the board. So is the attorney involved in that at all? Is it more just like a facilitating role? Or just, what is the general involvement in that?
Generally, I haven't personally put on a pardon hearing before, but generally, like just the application process, a lot of people that have been charged with these crimes or are on the other side of it don't know how to articulate like the good things they're doing in their life. So it's like we pretty much bring it out and like, what good things are you doing in the community? What jobs are you working towards? What license have you secured? What certificates have you obtained? So in the application role is me to just put the narrative down on paper to like, hey, this person's a good candidate for this role. And like, even though I might have more, I say a different vocabulary and are able to articulate the same things they're saying in a different way, I'm just telling their story to be more efficient and effective to have an impact on those involved in making that decision. But I would presume at a hearing that I would be involved in guiding or prepping my client for the questions that the board would ask them, just to be prepared to say what curveballs they might throw, or to make them sure they effectively communicate, like what they are achieving, what they expect to get out of this program, that they're staying on the right, straight and narrow, and why they're qualified and should receive a pardon.
Could I add, when I was there, Duquesne University, Professor Tracy Lewis McCann and her team, they were physically standing to my left and to my right. And that's a lot of mental support for anyone standing in front of that intimidating courtroom. And I've stood in a few courtrooms, but just to be there and look on the walls and see all the gold and all the biblical statues and pictures, and you might think you're prepared to answer any questions. They're going to give you 15 minutes. Now, you don't know what question they're going to ask. You don't know if it's going to come from Josh Shapiro, the Attorney General, from Lieutenant Governor. There's 5 of them. So they can ask you any question, or they can have you tell your story and paint your picture, where you can just waive your time to just have an open mic for them. And they can just ask you any old question, and you better tell the truth, because Mr. Flood will be sitting over there on the left, not recording, but typing everything that you're saying. So if you said something that happened on a certain date at a certain time or whatever, he's hitting that computer, and it's going to come up right then and there, and he's going to tap that microphone and say, that is incorrect. So that right there, as far as being in that courtroom, is just something. It's just an experience that unfortunately I had to experience. And so now what I do is I help other people. I'm no attorney, but I give soft advice. You know, I'm that third rail. I'm that power line, and then the people in the community, because I've been through that storm and I've made it through that storm. So again, it's a whole different beast once you're physically in there. And so you really can't prepare what they're going to ask you, but it's good to have your attorney prepare you, and your attorney can physically travel with you and be sitting right there with you. And that means a whole lot to a lot of people. I know it meant a lot for me.
And then I know you were talking about you haven't done the Pennsylvania process, you've done the Georgia process, but you yourself went through kind of a pardon type process when you were applying for your bar application. Can you just talk a little bit about your personal story and why you relate so much to people trying to get pardons and expungements?
Okay, I can actually say I actually had an expungement before. So 2. So growing up, I grew up in the inner city. Made some bad decisions. I've been a victim of violence on 2 occasions, actually. So being though as I had a record and I had it expunged, when I went to law school, I have to disclose all that before going to law school. So then when you graduate and you apply to take the bar exam, you do the same thing all over again. And so it came time. Well, Pennsylvania was a different process than Georgia. So I did all that. They let me take the test, pass the test. Then I get a package in the mail just saying like, hey, we're still doing our character and fitness investigation. That's what it's called. The character and fitness, to make sure you have, I guess, the character to become a lawyer. You're trustworthy. You have good credibility within the community and the profession. So that went on. Then the investigator reached out. She pretty much asked me a couple follow-up questions. Are you involved in a gang? Why do you possess guns? Why are you a victim of violence? Why do you feel like you're targeted? So they eventually denied me. So we have an appeal process. So I appealed. I hired a lawyer to actually become a lawyer. So I had to get a lawyer. I got people to speak on my behalf, judges, professors at my school, colleagues, old coworkers. We went there. We had a hearing. And told them why I'm a good person, why I'm qualified, the things I'm doing in the community, the amount of time that passed before I had any involvement with police, and took like a 3-month process. Then they finally, hey, you passed. They let me in the bar exam. They let me in the bar, and it was a weightlifting moment. So like for months, I'm just like, dang, I've spent all this money on school. I passed these tests. I used all these resources. I had all this support throughout this whole process, and these people sitting on this board control my future. And like, it's like, once it was over, it was a draining process. But once you got on the other side, it was like, okay, I'm here for a reason. So like anybody that's going through anything similar, I try to like encourage them. Like, hey, it was hope for me. It's hope for you. This stick your ground and keep working towards what you want. So it's what's for you is for you. Like no matter what obstacles get in front of you, you're going to get to where you're destined to be. Right.
And even when I did my first initial pardon, I was denied the first time. A lot of people don't know that. But once you're denied, your application is still valid for a year, and they'll tell you why they denied you. So you have a year to get your stuff in order, and then you don't have to reapply. You'll just fix what they said was wrong, and your application is still there. Also, when you do that, a lot of people might get discouraged and make it seem like, it's not going to work. I'm not going to do that. You have to keep people encouraged, and you have to let them know that, like what John just said, what's for you is what for you. No man or no woman can take anything, a blessing from you. That blessing is yours. It's going to happen that way. And so you just have to stay focused, and you just got to stay hungry. And what I used to tell my students, I like to play basketball and the wrestler. You got to stay on the mat. You got to stay in the paint. You got to get them rebounds. You just got to keep scoring. Don't run. Just stay right there, and you'll be good. You'll definitely be good. But we need to connect and then tell people. I'm very transparent. I have no problem of telling my story. I ran for city council, and my case was 20 years old. They worried about what I did. First of all, they worried because I won, and I ran everything through I ran my campaign through my barbershop. But my case was 20 years old. I was 45 when I ran. I did that. I was 45, 46. So my case was when I was 19, 20 years old, and I've done nothing ever since then. Then what caught their mind, then what blew their mind was I received letters from, different judges, police departments. I got a letter from the head district attorney. I got all types of letters from state reps. Just your letters of recommendation. That right there would add a lot of weight. They can't say this is a lot of weight they can't say this is a lot of water with no weight. Then they're going to look at the things that you've done. I've been a business owner for 20 years. I've employed 15 people for the last 20 years. I've taught at the barber school in Pittsburgh. I've done things in my community with the kids in the schools, and you can be your own Picasso. You get to paint your own picture, and you frame it, and you put your signature in the corner of that, because all they're going off of is an old picture that they took of you 20 something years ago. And the pardon allows you to make your picture more vivid and to change the lens on what it is. What I did back then does not define who I am right now, and it definitely won't define what I'm going to do in the near future.
Yeah, I just had a quick question for John and Corry. One of the things that is so striking, about the conversation that we're having tonight is that it seems like this refrain that this keeps happening of it was a situation or a bad decision early in life, and I think at a certain point just like a coincidence / a pattern, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know, in any other community, you'll find people who are, secretaries of state departments, representatives for district attorneys, attorneys, who all can say, well, at a certain time in my life, I was put in some situations that weren't the best situations, and I had to, deal with some challenges. So I think it underscores that we have to, talk about, some of these, and I appreciate, everyone, we all got to take, responsibility for our actions, but, it just, to me, as, it's such a systemic thing, we just didn't have like, lawyers and secretaries of state departments and community liaisons for, district attorneys. But I think it's just such a striking thing that 3 professional, respected, professional people still at a young age found themselves in situations, that, folks in other communities with your same intelligence, with your same talents, that ended up the same place that you had, didn't have to go, this journey. So as we talk about helping getting folks out of, these challenges, to me, it just underscores the importance of the systemic inequities that put, particularly Black and brown men in situations, at a very early age, to then have to go through all these other, challenges to overcome them and become productive members of society again. I apologize for the long speech in the middle of the show, but it just, to me, it just seemed just such a striking thing that, that was kind of just hit me in my head for the last half hours I've been listening to your testimony.
Yeah, life is something that everyone lives. And life is full of choices. There's so many choices in life, but choices are so important. One bad choice can put you in the ground. One bad choice can put you behind those bars with the letters behind your sentencing, which is life. that means you're not going to get another chance, And I tell my young guys, life is not a Call of Duty game. We're not playing Xbox. Once you're dead, you're dead. Once you're gone, you're gone. You cannot hit that reset button and keep on playing. Life doesn't work like that. Mistakes are too costly nowadays in 2021. So the older guys and guys older than me, we need to strap our boots up and we need to stand up and speak facts to power. And we need to speak facts to our people in the community and anybody else in our community. The problem with the system was when I do something wrong, or when my son or somebody else or a person of color do something wrong, throw them away, put them in jail. They're a thug, they're a hood. They'll never change. But if somebody else whose skin is not the tone of mine, they're a good person, they just made a bad choice, give them a slap on the wrist, 6 months house arrest or something like that. We've never had those resources, but that's just how the system is. And so we have to challenge the system and not change the system. We need to improve and modify the system where it's more, we need to recalibrate the system because it's off balance. It hit too many potholes, it's leaning too left, or it's leaning too far to the left or too far to the right. That's when the car needs a wheel alignment, and the system is a car that needs a wheel alignment. My opinion.
Thank you for that metaphor. John, did you have anything you wanted to share?
I would piggyback on Mr. Sanders. It's like coming up, like we wasn't exposed to a lot, like where I come from. So like a lot of decisions I made they wasn't well-informed decisions. Like a person wasn't in my position where I'm in now to like come back and tell me like, hey, life can be good if you make these decisions. You're not going to get a second chance of doing anything. It's easy to get in trouble. It's hard to get out of it. So
yeah.
So you don't want to forgo any opportunities. Like you get in trouble, you get felonies. There's a lot of opportunities you're throwing away anyway. Then on top of being Black, you got to be great in some of the things you do just on the strength of who we are and where we come from. So then if you're getting in trouble on top of that, you're making it harder hill for you to climb in the long run. So if you make the right decisions early on, you're going to make it easier for you going forward, your family, generations to come after you, because you already setting the bar each time. You're improving, you're getting better, and getting involved into like the systems. Like you're not going to seek change, you're not going to see it unless you actually get involved and push different legislations forward and hold people accountable that's in those positions. So that's it. That's my TED talk on that.
Yeah, I'll say that. And then for those of you who are just tuning in, John is the owner and managing attorney of the Reed Legal Law Firm in Pennsylvania and Georgia. And some of the things that you do, John, in addition to helping people with the pardons and expungements, you also kind of give guidance to other people who have similar backgrounds who are trying to go through law school and be an attorney as well. And so why do you think it's very important that impacted people, kind of as Corry said, needs to get into this will alignment? Why do you think it's very important that they become involved in the process as attorneys and criminal justice workers?
Because a lot of people say like there's a distrust between people like in the legal profession and in law enforcement. You think people are just taking the money from the neighborhood. If you become that person that people go to in the neighborhood, there's some type of trust. There's a rapport. There's a camaraderie. Like, hey, he's one of us. I know, at least, and looking on some of them are not, but you would think so. Like he come from the same circumstances I come from. He understands the uphill battle that we're fighting, and if you're in those positions, that's going to be a whole different clientele that other people can't even reach, or they don't have that connection with. You know what I'm saying? So, and I think it's important for us to challenge ourselves to become things that we haven't seen in the neighborhood. Like I didn't know a lawyer coming up. All I knew is like, oh, we paying a lawyer. My cousin got a plea. They're getting arrested. We got to use them for this process. It's like, yo, I don't know anybody around here. I'm gonna challenge myself to become that. I know it's hard. It's an inspiring profession, but I'm gonna rise to that occasion and become something I never saw before and be on the other side of this.
You got to be what you want to see.
That's right. Ryan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did have just one final, like more practical question. Just because I know there's a lot of people who are concerned about this. For anyone who has received a pardon or an expungement or anything along those lines, obviously it's a whole different ballgame with the character and fitness in the bar and everything. But if a prospective employer or landlord or anything like that asks them if they have any prior convictions, are they still required to disclose that information, or because it doesn't show up on the background check?
No, sir.
Your whole history is shredded. You say no, and nothing will pop up. Like I said, if I was young enough, I would probably be a police officer, but I can't. My age won't allow me to enroll. You can do any and everything that you wanted to do. Like you got one of the cleanest records, like you was when you was just born. It's shredded. It's not sealed. It's not expunged. It's gone.
Yeah, it's like it never happened. It's like it's nothing for them to question you about because it's not there. They can't pull it up in no system. It's been removed from your actual record. So
you should have saw the facial expressions of the people that knew me way back who owned gun shops when I went in there and bought myself and my wife a gun and then put it in my name. Their eyes was just like, oh, wow.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that, because I know that's, a lot of people, have concerns related to that as well. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Redemption is real. You get the right people. Like I said, you push forward. We make mistakes. There's nobody that's never made a mistake. There's nobody that's never needed a push on a swing, and life is all about ups and downs, and you're supposed to grow and learn from your mistakes. I'd rather sit down and eat soup with someone that I call a friend than eat steak with someone that I got to look at as an enemy. So that person right there will push and pull me and test me to be a greater person and a better man. And so that's what we need to do in our communities. In order to allow your communities to grow and to be better and to be more complete and whole, you got to first improve the people, the individuals within inside the community. Then the community can grow and will grow as a whole.
And I just wanted to jump back to an issue that we did talk about earlier when we had Secretary Flood and Julie Gilliard from Lieutenant Governor's office. And you just talked about it again. I just want to lift it up for those who are just joining us. And we're talking about like pardons and that entire, process and infrastructure in state government. And you talked about like, pardons and expungements. You talked just a little bit of difference just from your perspective, someone who's gone through the process, the difference of a sealing, someone's background versus expunging versus the full pardon that you received.
I'll break it down like a deck of cards. You have your ace, you have your king, and you have your queen and your jack. Okay, your sealing is going to be your jack or your 10. Your pardon is going to be your joker. Okay, your expungement is going to be the suit under that. So you want to go ahead and get the highest card, because everything else underneath will bow down and fall in suit. But if you have a case and you just needed something sealed and you're over 70 years old, like Mr. Flood said, that might be the easiest thing for you to do, because it's not you're seeking job employment, or it's not like you're trying to be a head coach of a high school or working at a federal government job. That just covers stuff that people in the public can hit a few buttons and see what your background was, what you did, because they can't find your high school yearbook. So they want to hit a few buttons on a laptop and see what you did. So the best thing to do is just go ahead and get the pardon, and everything will fall like dominoes in suit. Because after you get the pardon, you still have to get an expungement. Now, an expungement, it's on a level of the judge. So a judge will expunge am I saying it right, John? The judge will do your expungement, because that means you didn't go upstate. You didn't get locked up. You wasn't behind prison bars. You didn't come out on parole.
Yeah,
a lot of people get expungements mean you didn't physically go to jail.
Correct. Yeah, it's just like the judge, you were just arrested. So they're just wiping that off your record. So you didn't actually serve time.
Right.
Yeah. So
but you can still see that certain people, federal government can still see your expungement. Federal government won't see nothing on your state. Now, federally, it's called a clemency. A president has to do that. Your governor does the pardon. A lot of people get those mixed up also. A federal clemency is a federal charge, and only the president does that one. But the governors of each state does the state pardons.
And that's very important to note, because especially for people who have drug convictions, they may have a state charge and a federal charge. And so if you are one of those people, because of both jurisdictions, you have to go through the process both times. You have to get the governor's pardon and the president's clemency. If because we know legal charges and because of mass incarceration, a lot of times people face both state and federal charges, unfortunately.
Right, but you still can get a pardon even if you had a federal case. Yes, people think that can't happen, but and that kind of waters down your drink. So it's making as your time and your charge is older, it's good to get the pardon still, even though you're still waiting on a federal clemency from a president. So I just educate people. I do my best. Like I said, again, I'm no lawyer, but they reach out to me through my barbershop. They reach out to me from my job down at the DA's office at the Center for Victims. I charge no one, not a dime. I mean, because I was blessed to have Duquesne University and those students actually walk me through the whole process from A to Z. So I'm blessed. I got a job. I don't need to charge anyone. That's not the hat that I wear. So, I mean, I can't help everyone, but the people that I do help, I make sure they're very serious about it, because I'm not going to physically do paperwork and then you're going to turn around and just make everything just food. Now you're going to go sell drugs, or you're not judging anyone, but you have to be serious about this thing. If you're not serious with it, don't play with yourself, and don't play with me. Whenever you feel like that dirty water that's running through you is clear now, then you come see me. When the water is still coming out of the spigot, just let it run and just do you.
All right, with that, we want to thank both John Harris and Corry Sanders for joining us to talk about pardons and expungements. You can reach out to them directly. We'll put their contact information in the chat as well, so you can contact them. And it's also very important to note that if you're in Pennsylvania, we do not have automatic expungements or pardons, so you do have to file for these. But again, like Julie was saying, they have waived the fee for these processes. In addition to Duquesne Law Center, who does the expungement clinic, the Allegheny County Bar Association and the Allegheny County Public Defender's offices also hold expungement clinics. So if you want to get in contact with them, they help those for the community as well. But thank you so much, Mr. Harris and Mr. Sanders, for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me as well.
Thank you so much.
So I'll go ahead and get started for the rundown this week. We want to thank you so much for tuning into the One Hood Power Hour. This is one show, a part of the One Hood Media Network, where we bring you programming almost every single day. So we have a lot of things going on this week. Starting tomorrow, Tuesday at 2:00. We actually have What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know, talking about gentrification. We're going to have Councilman Ricky Burgess, U.S. Congressional candidate Jerry Dickinson, and Randall Taylor here talking about what's going on with gentrification. What do you need to know about gentrification and displacement? And that's going to be Tuesday at 2:00. On Wednesday at 6 p.m., we have This Week in White Supremacy. A lot of stuff has already happened, from police shootings to the closing, to even some incidents that have happened on the South Side. So we're talking about a lot of different events and how you can show up to push back against white supremacy at Wednesday at 6 p.m. Thursday at noon. We actually have two programmings on Thursday, but Thursday at noon, we have On Tilt, which is our mental health show with Julius Boatwright and Mama Danny Brown. They're talking about how you can preserve and protect your mental health at this time. Then Thursday evening at 7 p.m., we have a return of Ask a Black Doctor. We know that a lot of you have questions and concerns about experiencing vaccine hesitancy, wanting to know do you still need to follow CDC guidelines? What do you do if you're going outside? Can you hang out with your friends in the community? So we have Ask a Black Doctor for Thursday at 7 p.m., hosted by our CEO and founder, Jasiri X. And rounding out this weekend, on Saturday, we actually have our our NOS hosted Travel NOS Next Level Slam. It's going to be our 1-year anniversary of the slam. It's going to be Saturday at 6 p.m. just talking about poetry and joy and happiness and Black excellence. So tune in on our channels, Facebook and YouTube, One Hood, One Hood Power, for the One Hood Media Network coverage and engagement. And with that, I'll turn it back to our co-host, Kahari Mosley.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And again, we want to thank our guest, Secretary Flood from the Department of Pardons, from the Pardons Board, Julie Gilliard from Lieutenant Governor Fetterman's office, Corry Sanders from the Center for Victims, as well as the District Attorney's Office, as well as Attorney John Harris from the Reed Law Firm. Thank you so much for joining us. And for those who are going to watch the replay, definitely have your notebook ready, because it was just a lot of great information shared tonight. And we're excited, as we are about, I guess, 30 days from the primary. So over the next few Mondays, there's going to be a lot of election stuff coming up. And so look for some more announcements coming soon about just all the races that are coming up, and you're just going to get inundated with information about the election over the next 30 days, and we're going to be a part of that. So just want to thank again our guests for coming, thank everyone for joining us, and looking forward to either catching you on the Sunday night sit down or every Monday at 7 for the One Hood Power Hour. On behalf of my colleagues Brian White and Miracle Jones, this is Kahari Mosley signing off. Until next time, thank you so much. Stay safe, stay engaged, stay involved in the process. Thank you. Good night.